Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to the council meeting for the 30th of April. We will start with our karakia. Kia. Kia. Thank you. We have no apologies this morning. We will start with our public forum. We've got 3 speakers. Rebecca Burgess, you're our first one up, Rebecca. Just need to turn your mic on. Thank you for sending in your information.
Oh, that's okay. I have timed this, so fingers crossed I don't go over 5 minutes. Good morning, Mayor, councillors and others present here today. I thank you for the opportunity to present to this meeting, and I wish to acknowledge the difficult situation our local councils are under, with repeated flooding events taking a toll. I am a Plimerton homeowner. My home is part of the Karihana catchment, which is the highest priority flood-prone area in the Porirua region. In 2020, nearly 60 homes were inundated with water. My property has flooded now twice in 6 years. I know of another on my road that has flooded 4 times. Something now must be done to alleviate the toll this takes on our communities. On Saturday, just over a week ago, I was home alone with my 6-year-old daughter. Rain had been falling heavily overnight. I looked outside and saw the now familiar sight of swirling rising water, which started to surround my home. The water was rising so rapidly, I had to think fast about what to do. I gathered I had around 5 minutes before the water entered my home, and myself and my daughter started lifting stuff onto beds and couches. Stress levels were high at that point. This is the second time this has happened in 6 years. That Sunday morning, I stood in my lounge with my baby in my arms, with the rapidly rising water rushing at me. It was truly terrifying. The water inundated my entire home and we were out for 10 months. We moved 15 times, living in Airbnbs and short-term rentals. I know someone who grew up in my home and he said there never used to be flooding of this type in my property. We live in one of the original seaside batches and for many, many years had no houses either side. Now large houses tower above mine, with lots of concrete and fences block overland flow paths, which in heavy rainfall these things act like dams and increase flooding risk. We won't be able to stop the water coming. However, councils have a statutory and moral responsibility to protect our homes so we can adapt. This council has inherited a long list of problems on the back of some questionable decision-making, i.e. building in front of overland flow paths and without design sensitive to the environment. Also, infilling of vacant lots has been a major contributor to this problem. This council promised Karihana Bay residents $17.9 million to remediate the flood issues that occurred in November 2020. The Karihana catchment was assessed by flood modelling as the highest priority flood-prone location in the city. So there is no question that this is a priority. In 2024, Council moved to reallocate this money to other things as the solution was found to be ineffective. In 2022, there was some discussion in the media about a draft flood retreat policy, but I've not seen anything about that since. I'm asking for 3 things here today. Make a concerted effort to get this highly on the agenda with the new water entity, as is your role. From a personal perspective, I'd like funding to raise my home, to ensure the future resilience of this property and protect my investment for my children. This would likely be cheaper than waiting for another flood and then buying out the damaged homes at significant social cost to our Karihana Bay community. This is already commonplace around New Zealand and many councils, are now funding house lifting to avoid future buyout costs. For example, in 2005, Greater Wellington funded house lifting of a number of homes. Auckland Council offers grants to lift housing following severe storms, and Gisborne District Council now does too. Going forward, we must make houses more resilient from the outset. We've seen what happens throughout the country if we wait. Perhaps the answer isn't another engineering solution to build more pipes, but instead look for solutions on a house-by-house basis. This is an approach that is widespread internationally, but not yet here in New Zealand. Tauranga City Council has a case study that has had significant positive results. In closing, Porirua City Council made the choice to build in this area, so Council must put it right. You must act. You have not only a legal obligation, but a moral obligation. Do the right thing, and soon, for the good of not only my family and for my property, but all the other impacted families and the generations beyond. You cannot afford to wait. Thank you again for the opportunity to present to this meeting today.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're actually out of time, but I'll let Josh ask one question and then I'll stop. Thank you, Josh.
Kia ora, Rebecca. Thank you very much for coming in, for your words and for providing that letter beforehand as well. And I'm sure you're bloody sick of this, and we do appreciate you coming in and speaking. I wonder, you talked about some examples, you've talked about lifting houses might be a little bit cheaper, hopefully, than buying them out. Do you have an idea, and not to put you on the spot, and no worries if you don't, we can look into it, I'm sure. When you say you're looking for funding, do you have a ballpark idea of what sort of resourcing or funding you're looking for from council to be able to do something like this?
I don't know at this stage what the total project would be to lift my home, but we have had a quote for 120,000 to do the lifting only, which doesn't include services, building decks and various things like that. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for coming in. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Julian Leggett, who is the Palestine Support Network of Aotearoa, and David Weinstein, who is actually speaking for himself. Would you both like to come up, and we'll give you 5 minutes each. Who's going first?
I
Turn your mic on, Julian. There we go.
push, just push. Oh yeah, there you go. I have a handout. Didn't
Yep.
have time to get it. Can you just pass that round? It'll save me reading everything out. Kia ora, Mayor and Councillors. I'm Julianne Leggett. I'm a resident of Whitby, and I'm making this proposal on behalf of the Palestine Solidarity Network of Aotearoa, PSNA. And this is David Weinstein. He will talk to you when I've finished. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today about, we're going to be talking about how our council can join other local bodies in New Zealand to support international law and to support our government's policy in the Middle East. So New Zealand's national policies on the occupied Palestinian territories is very clear based on international law, and accordingly the PSNA is asking local bodies across the country to adopt a procurement policy resolution. It's reproduced there in the handout. I'm not going to read it out now. What it boils down to is that the Porirua City Council would decline to purchase goods and services from companies that have been identified by the United Nations as being involved in the building or maintenance of illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory. This resolution, or a version of the resolution, has been already passed by the authorities that are listed there in the handout. Auckland City Council is now halfway through the process, so that would take us to 7. The background of this request, I'd just like to draw your attention to it, might sound a bit legalistic, but the UN Security Council Resolution 2334. It's really relevant to New Zealand because New Zealand actually co-sponsored that UN resolution when we held the rotating seat on the Security Council. So that was under Bill English as Prime Minister and Murray McCully as Foreign Minister. To boil it down, the resolution basically says that the illegal settlements are illegal and that they are an obstacle to peace in the Middle East. And I'd particularly like to draw your attention to the fact that the resolution draws a very clear distinction between Israel on the one hand and the occupied territories on the other. This is not talking about sanctions broadly against Israel. This is only talking about the illegal settlements. Our current government supports the resolution. All of the opposition parties support the resolution. So we're asking the Porirua City Council to to join with those other authorities that are listed there and stand alongside the government. The resolution would basically be that you would not purchase any goods or services from any company on the list. I understand the list is not very helpful to you, the link in a hard copy. I will send it through. There are currently 158 companies on the list. I would just note in passing that Christchurch City Council, when they passed this and went off and did the work looking at the list, found that they were at that point doing no business at all with any of those companies. So I would think the direct impact on you would be small, but the list is being updated, all the time. So that's why a hard copy is not much use to you. Okay, so I'd like to leave time for questions at the end, but I'll hand over to David now.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou, ko David Weinstein taku ingoa. Shalom. I'm a member of the diverse Jewish community, and I am a member of the Alternative Jewish Voices, but I'm here speaking by myself as an individual, as a citizen, a ratepayer, a homeowner in Porirua. I'm privileged to have grown up with a strong Jewish identity at home and in the synagogue, where I learned that the core Jewish values of justice, fairness, of always questioning what is right, and as we were taught at the Passover Seder dinner, to welcome the stranger. We were taught that slavery and oppression is wrong and to support those who are seeking freedom. Those are my Jewish values. The government rulers of the State of Israel do not display these values. There's oppression, there's violence, there are pogroms on the West Bank, and there's ethnic cleansing, and in Gaza and Lebanon, there's bombing and killing of innocents. To oppose these actions and the government that carries them out is standing up for justice and humanitarian values. It's not anti-Jewish to hold these views. Zionism is not Judaism. I don't hate Jews. Supporting the rights of Palestinians is not anti-Semitism. The proposal before Council is but a small way to stand up and show opposition to the occupation in a similar way that New Zealanders stood up and boycotted apartheid South Africa. It's a small thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. Thank you and shalom.
Thank you. Okay, now we're open for questions. Moira.
What you will hear, what we have heard certainly around the country, is that this is not the business of local government. We should get on with roads and rubbish and our core business. So what is your response to that, please?
This is covered in the handout, but I'll just mention it, that some of those authorities had already gone ahead with this, sought advice from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Auditor General's Office as to whether it was appropriate for them to go ahead with this this procurement policy. And both the Ministry and the Auditor General's Office replied by saying, it's the local body's decision alone, we will not give advice on it, it's over to you to determine your own procurement policy. So I guess the fact that 6, now 7, close to 7 other local bodies and authorities have made the decision to go ahead with it suggests that it can be seen as being well within your purview. Yeah.
It's a small symbolic step, but these things do matter, as we've seen in, with opposition to apartheid. It's not going to cost the council anything, but to make a symbolic statement like that does carry weight, along with all the other councils have done that.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, thanks for this. You mentioned that the list is being updated all the time, so you're asking us to sign up to something that's open-ended, is that what you're saying?
So I'm not familiar with how procurement exactly works, but I imagine the procurement process would have a new step in it, which would say if we're going to sign a new contract or if we're going to renew an existing contract, we would refer back to the list in case it had changed. About 2 or 3 years ago, several companies were removed from the list. And then a little bit later, some new ones were added. So yes, it is evolving, depending on, of course, the ideal is that some of these companies might respond to these kind of actions by choosing not to support the illegal settlements anymore, in which case they can be removed from the list. Yeah.
Just to give you some examples, like SodaStream is a well-known company that's based or originates in the West Bank, and there's a number of companies that support military, which is used for purchasing arms and that sort of thing. So I'm sure council and governments have policies against things like that. So this is of a similar nature.
Thank you. Nobody else? No? Okay, thank you both for coming in. Okay, have we got any conflicts of interest declarations, anyone? No? And I've had no notifications of extraordinary business. So confirmation of the minutes of the 26th of March. Can I move that to put it on the table? Seconded by Councillor Leggett. Any issues with anyone? All those in favour? All those against? Carry. Mayor's report. It's been a rough few weeks. When I became the chair of the CDM committee, I never thought I'd be declaring a state of emergency, as you've heard with Rebecca in the room today. So I do want to thank all our staff, the emergency services, Lifelines, Remo, and all the local volunteers who actually got out on the ground and helped out with people in our community during the storm. And I do want to acknowledge those residents who were impacted as well. We've had the celebrating of the Biz Hub, and then Hemi and Kathleen and I joined the Tita Bay School Beach Triathlon, handing out all the medals, which is always a fun thing to do. I think some people have learnt they need to have wet weather shoes in the water. I had the Willowbank Quarry Open Day, which was really interesting. If you get a chance and they have another one, I suggest you pop along. It's quite fascinating up there. Moira and I went into Eid, the day to celebrate Eid, and at the arena in town. Joined the Porirua Brass Band to hear their competition piece for their performing, and they ended up coming 5th. And then, of course, we had the fantastic Phoenix woman at the park for the Blacktown Cup, which unfortunately they lost, but they are back there to a sold-out crowd in a couple of weeks. Kylie did the Whitireia graduation for me, so thank you. That was a huge day. Phil and I joined the Cambodian Buddhist Trust to celebrate Kuma New Year. Had a police graduation. Kylie and I did the RSA collecting. I think Jeff did, and I suspect there's a few others that I haven't seen. And then, of course, we had Anzac Day with 7 services around the city. And at the weekend, I did the Ole prize giving for a tournament where they had 10 to 12-year-olds who had come from Tauranga down. So it was a huge day in the city, a weekend. And then Phil and I did the Capital Kiwi project in Parliament on Tuesday night. They've released more, but they brought 6 birds in, and it was absolutely packed. So it was a lovely thing to see. I felt a bit sorry for the birds, but they're now living safe in the hills behind Macra. Taku. Oh, we forgot the blessing of the mural this morning.
I think the highlight was for the month was the 50-day graduation. It always sort of keeps you in awe in terms of how countries that have chosen to settle with us people, and to see them graduate and to see the families all excited is awesome. It's great. And the other thing was Anzac Day, I guess, on top was also a good day to be a part of. It's always a good day, Anzac Day. And if you've got time, go along and see the movie Money. It's a great movie about the Victoria Cross. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we move to our first report. Councillor Hayward, 10.1, recommendations from Te Puna Kore, 23rd of April.
I move that the minutes of that meeting be accepted as a true and accurate record.
Seconded by Councillor Trillin. Any changes? All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. 11.1, Tamariki and Rangatahi status report. Officers would like to come forward. I'll move it to put it on the table. Seconded by Councillor Bylaw.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Through the chair, just a brief intro. This is the first significant change we've made to this report since we first introduced it in 2017. Our intent with this year's report was to take what the data was telling us and match it with insights from people in the community that work with our Tamariki and Rangatahi and turn it into something that's more meaningful. There's also an ongoing piece of work to try and provide more regular updates just on the data alone. That requires us working with the government agencies to get more prompt information from them, but that's underway and is ongoing. In terms of this year's report, the results are mixed, as they tend to be, but there are more areas moving in the right direction than not. We've also had offers from some of the people we spoke to produce this report to come and speak to council and talk about their mahi and what life is like for the young people they work with. So if that's something that would be useful, we'll find a time that suits. And yeah, happy to take any questions and also any suggestions for how we can keep evolving this report and making it more useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Duncan, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the report. Look, just interested on page 6, sorry, item 6 on page 18, we had offers from some of the people we spoke with. Yep. I don't need to carry on with that, do I? Or, it was just, we spoke with to come and speak to council about their work. That would be quite interesting, actually. I reckon that'd be well worth pursuing. Yeah.
Yep, Councillor Lawler.
Yes, just endorsing that. I think the approach of giving us information through agencies working with Rangatahi in the city is a good one. Mm-hmm. I wonder about the demise of the census, given a lot of this data is quite reliant on the census. Will we have other avenues for kind of that hard data about young people in the city?
Through the chair, all of that data that was previously in the census, Stats NZ intends to keep producing. Based on their timelines, it might be about 5 or so years before we have a good idea about how they're able to do it and whether it's going to plan. But in theory, they'll be replacing all of that with smaller surveys and administration data. So yeah, it's something we're interested in, we're watching, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Councillor for Manners?
In page 23, and I haven't seen the questions, but I noticed that youth satisfaction with council is low, and just would like to know what questions were asked that brought about that data, and given that their satisfaction for events and even most facilities is quite high.
Through the chair, I guess the first point is because it's based on the electoral roll, it is just 18-year-olds up, so it's not capturing the under 18s. And secondly, that's quite typical of the survey, and that's not just young people, but the wider community tends to rate the facilities and also like the parks and the playgrounds is quite high. But then that question of just satisfaction with council just as a whole tends to be lower. And so I think specifically for young people, it's hard to draw into what exactly is behind that. But it is.
Is there any efforts made to know or identify what they're not satisfied with?
Through the chair, not with young people specifically, but with the overall population, we do look into what is in the comments of the survey, what's behind that. And it usually comes down to rates is the big one. There's just a general, I think, often dissatisfaction, even though the individual facilities, they might be quite liked. When it comes to just the overall satisfaction with council, it tends to be lower.
Thank you.
Councillor Duncan, you forgot your question before.
I got carried away. On item 14, you have to excuse my ignorance here, but item 14, page 19, we'll also work with the BTG to ensure council's website has, what's the BTG?
Sorry, that's the IT area.
Great.
I'll note
Thanks
that
for
down.
that.
It's right, I thought it was something else too. Councillor
One-
Ford.
one-
Another one,
yeah,
sorry.
One other, just following up on Hemi's there. Young people are less satisfied. That highlights a lack of education, if you like. But especially when you turn to page 44 and see the extraordinary low turnout of young people voting. I'd think if they're not happy with it, you would think they would get out and vote, wouldn't you?
Councillor Ford.
Yo, I was going to say the same thing. But I wondered if you had any commentary around the government's attendance requirements for schools have coincided with improvements in attendance. So prior to that, schools were doing stuff, they were already on the up. It shows that it's, I think you said stable. Do you have any commentary around?
Through the chair, I'm sure if we can get a principal to come into a workshop, they can speak much more in depth in it. But yes, in the data, there was a very noticeable dip, I think around 2022 after COVID, and it had started to recover before the attendance requirements were put in.
Well, the government implemented
Yeah,
that.
but also the data in there is the amount that we're achieving. I think it was 90% of full time. So it's not the full attendance picture, but yes, it was
Okay.
improving, but it hasn't gone back to where it was either.
Right. And when you have getting worse, receiving a main benefit, that means there's more on the benefit, or?
Yes, there is more young
Okay,
people on the job seeker support.
Thank you.
Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora koro mātua mihi kākana hita katoa, ngā mihi ki ka mahi mo te, e mahi ana mo tēnei take. I have a question, but I do have comment afterwards, if that's okay.
You can do both.
Okay, thank you. In regards to the engagement section, would it perhaps help the council in terms of illustrating its mahi in this space to look at additionally the role of young people in participation during our consultations, long-term plan, for instance? I know we have done work in that space that we should highlight as part of trying to improve engagement in that specific space. Is that too much to add into this report?
Through the chair, no, we can look into that. Whether we ask at the age question every consultation, I have to see, but there's certainly, I think, some of the big ones we do ask that, and that's something we can include in the future.
Comment?
Yeah.
So, as I said before, thank you very much to officers for bringing this item in. I'll support the motion. It's a sobering report and what it actually doesn't cover. In spite of efforts by our community, whether it's to Ahuru Mōwai, Ngāti Toa, CPC to provide whare, we're still let down, particularly by central government and specifically by Kāinga Order. I understand the council is likely to be meeting with various community groups to hear what is going on the ground, but the report is likely to confirm what I've felt for a very long time. Delays and cutbacks on building social housing in Porirua harms our rangatahi. And also, it's not just housing in isolation, it's a job creator. Report illustrates the specific challenge for young people to find work. No one around this table is going to be opposed to that. In fact, our council has made commitments to supporting youth employment. So we're doing our bit, and our local partners, including Ngāti Toa, are too. But right now, the government is like the Prime Minister on breakfast television, absent. Our city will not thrive until we support those who need us when it comes to a roof over their head. So I call on our government to honour commitments made, show some leadership. I support passage of this report, but my message to the Prime Minister is quite simple. Step up or step aside. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. It's a very good report and it is sobering. I know working with Partners Porirua, it is quite a bit. And I'm following on from you, Councillor Hayward. A shout out to the Health Department and the Minister to keep funding our health nurses in our secondary schools, which is at the moment definitely off the case next year. So we need to look at that, and you're going to hear a lot of shouting from this me on the ground because I am exceptionally grumpy. But the report is fantastic, so it was all those in favour. I know it's noting all those against. Carried. I saw every hand. Okay, 11.2, approval to consult in our proposed... Thank you, Councillor Ford. Who's coming forward? Ladies.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief intro. We've had 2 workshops with elected members on these topics. We have tried to incorporate feedback where appropriate, and where we haven't, we've outlined that in the cover reports. Today, we're asking whether the draft bylaws and policy are ready to go out for public consultation. Feedback will shape the options that we bring to you at deliberations in June. So we're open to any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lawler?
I have a couple of questions. I support the direction of the work, and I agree where you have politely suggested that our amendments are not that helpful. I have no question with that. There are a couple of areas I'm interested in. One is the statement of proposal, the attachment 5.1 on the public places bylaw. The FAQs talk a lot about rough sleeping and freedom camping and homelessness, etc. That feels to me a little bit leading, and given that the bylaw covers a range of issues, are we, that suggests to me, if I was coming to this to make a submission, that we're reviewing our bylaw because of the Move On legislation. That's not the case, and I just wonder whether the kind of predominance of questions around homelessness and rough sleeping is just going to lead to a flood of submissions about that, as if that's the only issue at stake in our bylaws. So that's, I guess, a comment as much as a question. The second thing is really about also about our public spaces bylaw. I just want to understand from an economic development point of view, if I'm a trader and I want to bring coffee carts in, or I want to put out chairs and tables on the footpath so that people can sit in the sun, it wasn't clear to me looking at our bylaw whether it's currently enabling and whether any changes are suggested around that. Kia ora.
So there's there's no change to the permitting scheme that allows for that. However, with the smoke-free public places policy, we are considering not allowing smoking if council permits dining on outdoor spaces. Yeah. So there's no changes to the permitting scheme. It's working as it usually does.
Councillor Trillin?
Thanks very much. Broadly in favour of what I've got here, I had a clarifying question around the length of time with election signs. I know we talked about that a little bit, and the indication was to keep it as is in the report for 9 weeks. What I'm trying to understand is, obviously we know that's not the case everywhere. Wellington has a shorter period. So is it as simple as that's not in their district plan and therefore there isn't a clash? Or does that clash exist and they've just found a way to work through it?
I can't answer for other councils. In our case, I hope I answer your question when I explain this.
Yeah.
We are consulting on keeping it 9 weeks to keep it consistent between both types of elections. The local electoral act gives us discretion to determine how much time we give for local elections, but national elections is 9 weeks. So the 9 weeks keeps it consistent between both types. If you think we should consult on a different time frame for local elections as opposed to the 9 weeks for national elections, which is set by legislation, we can't change that. I'm happy to put that into the statement of proposal. Have I answered your question?
Yes. Well, not exactly, but okay. you got there. Yeah. So I think I asked the wrong question, and you actually gave me the correct answer as my answer to that.
Oh, no, that's okay.
So that
I don't know if I gave you the right answer.
That was helpful as my response. So I guess that the question I have is, how is this currently going to be... So my personal view, just based on engagement with residents, I think people get sick of election signs, and my concern actually is that by the time we get to voting in local elections, people are just over it and they've tuned out. I'm not convinced that it helps. I think a shorter, snappier period might work. If we just leave this exactly as is, will the length of time signs up for election signs be contemplated in the consultation document? Is that something that people will be prompted to respond to? Because if so, then we don't necessarily need to change this. If that's
Okay.
not the case, then I'd probably suggest maybe we consult on changing it and see
Yes.
what people think.
Yep. Support you. We need to consult on changing it to 6 weeks for
Yeah.
local.
So
Yep,
I'm,
that's fine. I can do that.
if necessary, I guess signalling off the back of my question, I'm happy to formally move that.
Do we
but
need to move
do
it
I
or
need
not?
to, or can you just make that change?
I think it's quite a change. I might defer to Jack on this one. I think you need to resolve to change it. Yeah.
A mover and seconder.
Okay, so I'm happy to
And Councillor Ford
propose an
seconded,
amendment that
yeah.
we do that, and I think you understand what we're asking for. I don't need to give finicky wording. Okay, cool. That was my only substantive comment. Moira asked the other question I had, so that's me. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, are we happy?
Thank you. I was one of the ones that was very strong in mandating the use of wooden
Yes.
waratahs over the
Yeah, I
metal
do
ones.
remember that.
However, I accept. I don't accept physical injury and electrocution. Sorry, because I mean that happened only once in what is it, 5 years? Is it?
Yeah,
Once,
something. Yeah.
But what I do accept
quite a
is
lot.
well,
Yeah.
sorry, but we'll fall in a hole more times than we do that.
Yeah.
But I do accept the potential damage to the underground services, so I'm quite happy as how it is. So
Cool.
no.
To consult on wooden, then we'll leave it as
Correct.
is. Cool. Yep.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Hayward.
Correct me if I'm wrong, having read through this proposed bylaw and from the workshops, there was supposed to be some language in here about feeding of animals in public spaces.
Yes.
And I can't see that in here. Is it covered in the nuisance section into the definition?
That's
Could you-
interesting because it is. So, okay, are you talking about the draft bylaw?
Yes.
Or, okay, so I did not clearly articulate this, and I think I need to correct the paper. We are consulting on whether we should include it. I have not included it in the bylaw. I do not think we have the evidence base to support its inclusion. However, I'd like to leave it to the public to give us feedback. That's why it's not in the draft bylaw.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, that gives me
But I
clarity
do.
as to,
But I'll need to clarify that, I think. So it's cool.
yeah, I'll have no other questions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so would you like to read that amendment out?
So I've got a new resolution 3, everything moving down one. So agree to include the following matters as part of the consultation: length of time that election signs can be displayed for local elections. And then was there one about waratahs?
No, that's in there. Yeah. So that was local elections to 6 weeks. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we've had a mover and a seconder. Oh, Moira? Oh, Councillor Lawler, sorry.
A question as much as anything. I gave feedback about the FAQs. Do I need to get into amendments, etc., to suggest that the language around homelessness and rough sleeping be softened somewhat?
Through the Mayor, no, we will update that on Engagement HQ. It's only a real minor change. It doesn't change the intent behind them. So
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the paper's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? Carried. Thank you. Now move that we go into public excluded, seconded by, sorry, Councillor Hayward. I'm looking over there thinking who did it? All those against? All those for? Carried. Yeah.